In part 2 of this character design series, I showed you how to place your consistent character in various different locations and action scenes. But as you may have noticed, there's one huge problem. Even though our Carla character had a similar look and facial features in all of our examples, there was simply too much variation in her outfits, making it very difficult to use her in different scenes within a comic book. Luckily, we can use image prompts to fix this problem and make sure that Carla looks almost exactly the same in every single scene. I'm going to show you these unconventional methods to add a more consistent style to your storyboards and characters. So let's get started. Welcome back to part 3 of this character design series in Midjourney. So before we jump in, I'd like to start off with some good old expectation management. While all of the methods that I'm going to show you definitely work, not all of them are necessarily suitable for every situation. In fact, some of them have significant drawbacks, so please do not expect them to solve every single problem. And truth be told, all of these methods are far from perfect. Some of them also take considerably more time and may require you to make some edits outside of Midjourney. So be prepared to get your hands dirty because things are about to get a lot more complex. So with that said, let's kick things off. We are going to start off by creating some new concept art for Carla. We need her in various different poses and angles. So first, I'm going to create a full body character using the following prompt. Imagine glamour shot full body image, beautiful woman, bright red braided bun hair, only red hair, wearing a leather jacket in gray color, wearing a white tank top under jacket, wearing beige pants on legs, in the style of a Marvel comic book. I'm going to use the aspect ratio of 2:3. Normally I would not use a seed for this and simply re-roll until I find a good image. But since I already prepared these examples in advance, I want to recover the exact images I used. So whenever you see a seed in today's video, just ignore it because it's actually not really necessary. So from this set of images, I'm going to pick the top left one and I'm going to upscale it into a bigger size. And once that's done, I'm just going to open it up in a separate tab because we're going to need it later on. Next, I'm going to create another character concept, but from a closer angle, and I'm going to use the following prompt. Imagine glamour shot full body image, and the rest of the prompt is exactly the same as before, except that I've removed the reference to the legs. So from these 4 images, I'm going to pick the bottom left one, because it's the closest one to the style that we really want, and it's also closest to the one that we picked earlier. And I'm going to upscale it. And once again, once it's done, I'm going to open it in a separate tab for later use. Now I'm going to create one last character concept that is a portrait, and I'll use this prompt. Imagine close-up face of beautiful woman, bright red braided bun hair, only red hair, wearing a leather jacket in gray color, wearing a white tank top under jacket, in the style of a Marvel comic book. And that ends with our first segment. And then I'm going to start a second segment called photorealistic text, title, headline, typography, words. And I'm going to give it a negative weighting because in my previous tests, I kept getting like covers with titles and text on them, and I don't want that. Okay, excellent. So from this set of 4 images, I'm going to pick the bottom left one again. And once again, I'm going to upscale that one. And you guessed right, once it's done, I'll open that one in a separate tab as well. So now that I've generated these 3 concepts, I'm going to blend them together using this prompt. Imagine, and then I start off with the image prompts for all 3 of these images, and then I continue with a text prompt named glamour shot full body image, beautiful woman, bright red braided bun hair, only red hair, wearing a leather jacket in gray color, wearing a white tank top under jacket, wearing beige pants on legs, in the style of a Marvel comic book, and then the aspect ratio. Okay, and here she is. And technically, you don't really need to do this step, but based on my personal experience, I've had the best results by actually doing this. So consider this step optional, but I'm going to be using the bottom left version of these images throughout the rest of this video. So let's upscale the image by pressing U3, and we'll open it up in a new tab as well. Awesome. So we're now ready to start styling our existing scenes, as well as creating entirely new ones. Remember that scene of Carla sitting on top of the tank from part 2 of this series? So let's take that original prompt, including the seed, and simply add our Carla character concept and add it as an image prompt. Imagine, and then we add that very last upscale that we did as an image prompt, followed by wide angle shot, full body image, beautiful woman, bright red braided bun hair, wearing a leather jacket of gray color, only red hair, in the style of a military comic book, sitting on top of an army tank. That is basically the prompt that we originally had, we've simply added the image prompt. And voila, here is our tank scene, recreated with the specific style that we wanted. Or maybe you remember that dynamic battlefield scene that we created? Well, let's apply the very same new look to that image as well. Imagine, and we start off with the image prompt, and then wide angle shot, full body image, essentially mostly all the same, except that at the very end we have the running across the battlefield while aiming and shooting a gun at a target. Okay, looks pretty good, doesn't it? So now let's try to create something entirely new. I'm going to let Carla walk down a flight of stairs using the following prompt. Imagine, and then I begin with the image prompt again, wide angle shot, full body image, followed by everything that we're used to from the previous ones, except that at the end I'm going to add walking down a flight of stairs inside a modern government building. Okay, so let's check it out. Now, even though this does look like our Carla, you may have noticed these white stripes or gray stripes on the side of the images. The images actually look like they were cropped. And this is actually one of the major drawbacks of this method. We effectively have three problems right here. For one, we're using an image prompt in portrait format, even though the prompt that we entered is actually for a landscape format. They're not entirely compatible, and this is usually what happens when you try to blend them together. The second problem is that our image prompt has way too much white color in the background, and this information is translated into what you see here. You may have noticed that there's a lot of white color in the background of these images as well. And the third issue with this method is the fact that the image prompt that we use has a disproportionate impact on the overall composition of the image. Carla is more or less always placed somewhere in the middle, it's very centric, and there's not really much dynamic elements to it. Just to prove a point, let me show you another example. Imagine, and we start off with our image prompt, and then we enter the prompt aerial shot, woman with red hair standing on a rock, looking at an alpine panorama, blue sky, lush green grass below her, and an aspect ratio of 3:2. Now, it might not be as obvious here because there's a lot more going on in this image. However, do you notice the strong whiteness in the background? This is mainly due to the image prompt. We've provided a lot less information, especially regarding Carla's facial features and some of the other things about her body. So let me show you how you can sort of fix this. I want to create an image of Carla sitting on a couch reading a newspaper, but without using an image prompt. Imagine wide angle shot of room, beautiful woman, bright red braided bun hair, followed by everything that we're used to, except that I'm going to add reading a newspaper while sitting on the couch. So the benefit of this approach is that it allows me to create an entirely new reference image that not only has the right image format, but it also features a woman that looks a lot like Carla. I'm going to upscale the bottom left one to use it as a reference image in the next prompt. You don't necessarily need to do this. Technically, you could also just react to the image with the envelope icon and then use the smaller version of the image. But I'm sometimes under the impression that it does deliver better results later on. Next, we're going to use this image as our very first image prompt. Then we'll add our original style reference as a second image prompt, followed by the text prompt. Imagine, and then we start with our two image prompts, followed by wide angle shot of room, and essentially all of the same text as before. And as you can see, the images look a little bit more diverse and not as centered as they were before. You can pretty much do this with any sort of scene or activity that you want your character to do. However, you'll notice that due to the reference images, you're a little bit limited in terms of composition. Now, if you'd like to zoom out a little bit more and add more context to the location where your character is positioned, then here's an approach that works rather well. The good thing is that you'll also avoid having to upscale a new reference image every time. So I want to place Carla inside a shopping mall, and I want her to be standing on an escalator. And we're going to use multi-prompts for this. Let's start off by creating a diverse shopping mall scene. Imagine aerial view, well-lit atrium of a shopping mall, large escalator in the middle of an atrium viewed from the side, and then aspect ratio 3:2. This is going to be the concept for the first segment of our multi-prompt, and it represents the location that we want Carla to stand in. Our second segment will focus on a red-haired woman that is standing on an escalator. Imagine side angle shot, red-haired woman walking up an escalator. Now, bear in mind that you do not need to create these images separately. I'm only doing this to show you what these concepts look like in isolation. Normally, I would have simply entered a multi-prompt that looks like this. Imagine aerial view, well-lit atrium of a shopping mall, large escalator in the middle of an atrium viewed from the side, and that ends the first segment of our multi-prompt, and it's given a weight of 1. And then a side angle shot, red-haired woman walking up an escalator, and that ends our second segment, also with a weight of 1. So what happens is that the multi-prompt blends these two concepts together and gives us this set of 4 images. Once again, I'm only doing this to show you what they actually look like. You could easily skip all these steps and simply enter all of these segments and then add the image prompt at the front. Imagine, and then you start with your image prompt, aerial view, well-lit atrium of a shopping mall, large escalator in the middle of an atrium viewed from the side, weight of 1, side angle shot, red-haired woman walking up an escalator, also with a weight of 1. And what you get is this set of images. Now, these actually look pretty good already. However, the extremely centric and symmetrical composition is kind of annoying me. And that's why we're going to move on to the most challenging and complex method of all. I want to position Carla inside a coffee shop full of people, and ideally she should be queuing for a cup of coffee. So let's start off by creating the inside of the coffee shop, and I'm going to use multi-prompts for this. Here's the first segment that we're going to use. Imagine panoramic view of an industrial chic coffee shop buzzing with guests, aspect ratio 3:2. And if we look at the images, this is exactly what I was looking for. Next, let's create a second segment that sounds similar. However, I'm going to phrase it very differently, and I'm also going to use a different angle. Imagine aerial shot of the inside of a hipster coffee shop with many customers. So this time we get a bird's eye view of the coffee shop, which is really great because it allows us to blend the first and the second concept together in order to get an average of both angles. Don't believe that that's possible? Let me show you. Imagine panoramic view of an industrial chic coffee shop buzzing with guests, aerial shot of the inside of a hipster coffee shop with many customers. And both segments are given a weight of 1. So what did I tell you? This is a great example of how powerful multi-prompts can be when you use them correctly. But we're not done yet. We're going to add one more concept that looks like this in isolation. Imagine aerial shot from a distance of a beautiful red-haired woman standing in line for a cup of coffee. Now I realize this is a bit of an odd image. However, we're going to use this concept nonetheless. So if we summarize our full multi-prompt, it'll look a little bit like this. Imagine, and then we start off with our Carla image reference, panoramic view of a industrial chic coffee shop buzzing with guests. That's our first segment. Then aerial shot of the inside of a hipster coffee shop with many customers, and that's our second segment. And our third segment is aerial shot from a distance, beautiful red-haired woman standing in line for a cup of coffee. Now, I've not just added our Carla reference at the front, but I also want to emphasize the third segment with the girl a bit more, and that's why I've given it a weight of 2. This makes sure that the other elements of the prompt aren't too overbearing. Now, as you can see, we've successfully positioned Carla into our coffee shop at an angle. However, you may have also realized that Carla is actually way too big. She's much taller than all of the other characters, and this is mainly due to the image reference that we used. In the overall context of the prompt, her character is just way too dominant. Now you might be wondering, how can we fix this? Well, here's what I did. I decided that I like the composition of the top right image, and I decided to upscale it. So, as you can see, she's just way too tall. The most effective way of fixing this is to open this image in an external editor, such as Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Photo or Affinity Designer. So just to be clear, we're not going to create our final image in the editor. Instead, we're just going to tweak it into a much better image reference. Now, I'm going to skip this next part simply because the purpose of this video is not to show you how Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Designer works. But after I've done all of my edits, here's what the image looks like. I've essentially reduced Carla's height so she looks more similar to the other characters in the image. I then filled the blank space behind her by cloning other elements within the image. I then saved this image and uploaded it to Discord so I could retrieve the URL of the reference image. And we're going to use this new image reference in order to replace the other one that we've been using throughout the entirety of this video. But if that's the only thing we change, then I already know that Carla's face is going to look pretty ugly. How do I know this? Well, because I've tried it. So we also need to add an additional segment to the prompt. Our entire prompt will now consist of an image prompt as well as 4 additional text prompt segments. And here's what they are. Imagine, starting with our image prompt, followed by our first text prompt segment, panoramic view of an industrial chic coffee shop buzzing with guests with a weight of 1. Then our second segment, aerial shot of the inside of a hipster coffee shop with many customers, again with a weight of 1. Our third segment, but this time only with a weight of 1 instead of 2, aerial shot from a distance, beautiful red-haired woman standing in line for a cup of coffee. And finally, our original Carla prompt from part 1 and 2 of the series, extended by the activity, standing in line for a cup of coffee. Aerial shot from a distance, beautiful woman, bright red braided bun hair, only red hair, wearing a leather jacket in gray color, wearing a white tank top under jacket, wearing beige pants on legs, in the style of a Marvel comic book, standing in line for a cup of coffee with a weight of 6. So you might be wondering why I've added so much weight to this last part. Well, how much weight you need to give to it is basically a matter of trial and error. In your personal case, you might have to fine-tune and reduce it or increase it depending on what sort of an image you want to get. So, believe it or not, our full prompt literally looks like this. Now, I'm not going to read this entire prompt to you because it's simply the different segments that I just listed, but I think you'll agree this is one heck of a complex prompt. And no, I'm not kidding, I'm dead serious, this is what we're going to use. Here's what the result looks like. Okay, let's have a look. Now, obviously, you can argue that Carla's facial features are a lot less detailed now and do not necessarily look like the original. On the other hand, this shot is from a much greater distance than many of the other images that we created, and in the comic book style, there's going to be a lot less features anyway in the face. So did I overpromise when I said that this video is going to show you some unconventional methods? I don't think so. If you enjoyed the complexity of the last example I showed you, wait until I show you what else you can do with multiprompts. Part 4 of this series is going to be all about multiprompts and multi-character scenes. And once it's live, you'll find it right here in the corner of the screen. If you missed part 2 of this series, where we place our character in various different action scenes, then make sure you check out this video right here. And if you want to watch the entire character design series, then check out this dedicated playlist right here. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to leave a comment and keep on learning and take care.